Well, hello. Welcome back to the Alchemical Life podcast. This is your host, Abigail speaking. And if you watched the podcast regularly, I'm in a different location. Not really, same house. I just went from the garage right here to the kitchen because I just wanted to sit here with you guys. I didn't want to deal with the kind of hot environment in there. The AC's going, it's loud, but it's also like not going strong enough. So I just want to sit in the kitchen with you guys. So right now, and this episode should be short and sweet. So you know what? Like if you're on your lunch break, just sit at the table with me and let's just talk about helping you consider all of your programming depending on what background you come from. That is what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about programming considerations based on your origin story. So whether you are a runner, whether you are a lifter, or where you started from, right? What you've spent the predominant amount of time in your life doing, that is going to depend on how you move forward in your training. And I think this is really important because we see so much information online, on Instagram, on Facebook, on articles and all kinds of stuff of, what exercise to do and how to do them and what to incorporate in volume and intensity and frequency and all these metrics and how many times per week and blah, 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 and machines or no machines or free weights or unilateral, bilateral. It's like so much is getting thrown at you when in reality, it's like, who are you and what do you need based on where you came from? And that is going to, I think, clear up a lot of things when it comes to how you initially approach your programming. So we're going to get right into it. I'm going to talk about kind of both at once, right? I'm going to cover several bullet points, but it will cover both the lifter and the runner simultaneously. So buckle up, stay tuned. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes so that I stay on track so that you guys can have all the information you need by the time you finish your lunch with me. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So the first thing to note is the time spent in either is going to indicate the overall tolerance level. And what I mean by this is if you spend more time running, if you've spent more time on the road, on the track, on the trails, whatever, then it's going to obviously give you more room to tolerate increases and fluctuations or decreases, right, in volume and intensity and training frequency. Because you have a higher tolerance level for the thing that you've been doing for longer, right? You've just gotten used to and acquainted with the amount of running you do. Same thing with lifting, right? You're able to tolerate adjustments, undulations in training intensity, volume, frequency because you have lifted for an extended period of time. I come from a lifting background, right? So when I do my training blocks, I approach my training blocks differently than I would a lot of my clients who come from running or they have minimal strength training history and experience. This is because I have just lifted for so long, I can handle quite a bit more without taking as much damage or, walking the line of doing a little bit too much. That being said, I think it is important to note that as somebody who is running and entering into lifting, a lot of the just very basic drills and almost like rehab type of exercises don't necessarily give you all the things that you need. And we're going to get into that. But you do want to load up and you do want to go heavy and you do want to be able to get strong. That's the point of strength training. However, it's a matter of how we integrate that. That is key. And that's why I have several programs, right? That's why I have my program for the dual engine strength program is going to be for somebody who actually has a background lifting and is entering into the realm of running. And then I also have podium prep and then also the Be Unstoppable program. It's because I have one for people who are return to sport, the Be Unstoppable program. And then I also have the podium prep, which is somebody who's maybe a running background. They don't lift too much, but they are perfectly healthy and we can load them up a little bit, right? So I have 3 different types of programs here because I'm looking at 3 different types of archetypes of individuals that are coming to me and asking for help with their programming. So if you're interested in it, I'm going to be able to get those up on my website soon. And on the website, I'll also have a quiz. So if you are a little bit confused as to maybe what program is best for you, you'll be able to take the quiz and it'll give you the best program for you based off of the answers that you've put in. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited. I actually helped build the quiz. It was really fun. So I spent a whole afternoon. I was like, this is so much fun. Anyways, so runners, right, you're going to be able to manage more shifts in running volume or intensity more readily than somebody from a lifting background. And lifters are going to be able to do the same, but for lifting, right? So because of this, you're going to have a different looking program, right? So somebody like me who comes from a lifting background, the movements that I'm doing might require a higher level of skill. I might be able to go to a higher intensity. I might be able to get away with a little bit more training volume. So I might be able to go a little bit higher in the sets. I might be able to handle a little bit more actual training frequency. So I might be able to do a little bit more throughout the week. Because my ability to train, get the stimulus, and recover from said stimulus is going to be a little bit better than somebody who's super new to lifting. This also being said, I can do higher skill level stuff. So back to what I said initially, this means I can do things that are, maybe harder, intensive plyos, different drills, different, more explosive movements or dynamic exercises, things also like very hard strength lifts that require a certain degree of skill, a deadlift, a very heavy deadlift, a heavy squat, a heavy front squat, things like that I'll be able to do because they do require a decent amount of skill, and they do require a decent amount of internal stability that I have already gotten and earned over years and years and years of lifting experience, right? It's very rare that I'll have somebody from a running background come into the gym with me and immediately start back squatting. Very rare. Somebody who is got a lifting experience and they also run, I might load them up on a back squat. It just totally depends. So then moving into the next point. Sorry, I'm lost in the sauce with my notes right now. It's going to be harder for lifters, like where this I think there's a detriment for lifters in the actual strength training realm is it's going to be harder for lifters to lose muscle that they may really need to for sport, depending on how serious of a runner you want to be as somebody who lifts. If you just really like hybrid training, you like to lift and you like to run, then this isn't necessarily an issue. You can have quite a bit of muscle mass on you and still be quite fast and also run for very, very long periods of time quickly. But to reach very high levels, I don't even necessarily mean elite levels, but really competitive levels of running, you're probably going to have to lose a little muscle, which is very weird. It doesn't mean that the amount of muscle that you have is a bad thing, but I found for me personally, I just have more than required of me for the sport of running. I love having muscle. I love being strong. I love lifting. And so in some ways, that's something that I'm willing to sacrifice. Like I kind of am just like, I might not be the fastest person. I might not even be like a hyper competitive individual, but I can be really competitive with myself. And also I love to strength train and it's very enjoyable for me. For somebody that really wants to take the sport of running seriously, distance running in particular, you are probably going to have to sacrifice a little bit of weight loss. Like you're probably going to have to lose a little bit of weight. You're probably going to have to lose a little bit of muscle. And overall, your training frequency might have to lower quite a bit because muscle is something that's actually like kind of difficult to lose once you have it. You can maintain muscle mass with a pretty low training frequency and a pretty low amount of volume as long as effort is high. So that's where I would actually suggest to lifters to lift like a newer runner. Like if you're somebody that is going into running and you're like, I want to be so serious about running, this is all I care about. I want to lift to stay healthy, but I don't care about like being strong. I want to get fast and I want to be able to run this marathon in this amount of time. Then I would say actually I wouldn't suggest my dual engine strength program. I would suggest my podium prep program because the overall loadability, the overall volume, all of those metrics are encapsulated into a program for somebody who has some lifting experience and can do strength training, but is not necessarily very familiar with lifting as a whole. So on the lifting train or with people who have experience lifting, you guys are not going to be able to get away with as much undulation and volume and intensity with running. You just have to be a little bit more careful, like depending on how many months/years you have been running for, being able to maintain 30 mile, 40 mile, 50 miles per week, it's going to be challenging. So you might have to schedule more deloads, you might have to schedule more tapers, you might have to, make sure that volume, if you're increasing volume, you actually do increase it incrementally, and then you maintain that volume without any kind of adjustment in intensity, training intensity along the way. Or if you are keeping volume for an extended period of time, the adjustments or increases in intensity are very strategic and gradual. This is because you don't necessarily have years and years and years of a running base. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to sustain. And if you are trying to, ramp up volume or ramp up intensity or whatnot, then it's also going to be imperative to schedule in some off weeks, more frequent off weeks than somebody who's been running for a long period of time, right? All my runners out there, you're listening to this, you're like, dude, 50-mile weeks aren't that bad. 40-mile weeks are not that bad. 30-mile weeks, are you kidding me? It's like a normal week. But for me, my personal experience, like I started running 6 months ago very consistently. And I made a huge mistake, grave mistake of basically going from 0 miles a week to consistent 25-mile weeks, and then upping volume to 30 miles per week, and then maintaining 30 miles per week while I was heat training, while I was also ramping up intensity like crazy because I was mile training. And now I'm sitting here with a bum hip. So, it's just like, you've got to be really careful. So all of my lifters who are listening to this, just be cautious when it comes to how you input your running volume. I get super excited about it. So if you're like me and you get super excited about it, just be careful, because you want to be able to do it for a long time and go hard in paint. You got to also rest hard in paint. So there is that. My runners, I know you guys have just zoned out for a little bit. We'll tune back in, because I do want to talk a little bit more about the lifts for you guys. So when it comes to overall volume, intensity, frequency considerations for somebody who is a runner that has not been lifting for an exceedingly long amount of time, I would suggest, like, general guidelines are 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. 2 times a week, especially if you're super new to lifting, or if you are really close to I'd say 8 weeks or less out from an A series race, a really important race. 2 times a week is plenty. Doing something like 4 to 6 exercises, keeping it pretty bare bones, and just making sure that you eke the quality out of each of those, exercises. You don't need to be doing too much more than that. Keep the effort fairly high. So I wouldn't say overall intensity. You need to go off of like percentages, right? Because percentages of 1 rep max are just going to be really irrelevant for you. I'd go based off of perceived exertion, and keeping the perceived exertion relatively high. Like, I'm going pretty hard, I definitely feel like I have to rest in between sets. That kind of thing. I would go based off of those metrics. Once you have your 4 to 6 exercises, you have your couple days a week of training in, then you're also going to look at like overall rep scheme. And I wouldn't be going much over 15 repetitions for most of your exercises. And that's simply because the higher in reps you go, the less loadable the exercise is. And the goal is to increase strength and get stronger. And so you want to be able to work on that. And so you're going to have to load you're going to have to load heavy enough to get to a place where we're really getting stronger. And you also want to think about the overall output. So if you're trying to keep the output pretty high, right, the RPE, the rate of perceived exertion, you want it to be pretty challenging of an exercise. Then the more reps you're doing and the higher volume you are doing, the more damage, I don't love that word, but I'm going to use it, the more damage you are taking. And so you're going to go into potential runs later that week and just want to cuss your own self out because you're so sore. And that goes into my next point, which is soreness and perceived performance drop-offs are going to shift for people who have been lifting for a long time versus people who have been running for a long time when you go into lifting, right? Soreness is probably going to be higher in the newer lifters. This is just normal, right? So do not be alarmed if you do go into your first few weeks of training and you're like, man, I'm pretty sore after my lifts. It will buff, like you will get adjusted to it, and your muscles will get adjusted to it. They will become more resilient, I promise. It's just same with lifters. And when we started running, it's like you start running and you're like, oh my God, there are things that hurt that I just never thought would hurt, that runners don't even think about anymore. That also being said, I think there's a little bit of perceived performance drop off that occurs when you are sore if you have a background of running. So lifters, for example, me, my background, when I'm sore, I've gone into running sessions, completely wrecked, like my legs completely sore, where I'm like having to get an assist when I squat on the toilet to go potty in the morning. That being said, I've also had some of my best sessions when I'm really, really sore. So I don't get nervous. I don't feel like I don't really perceive my performance to be worse, especially going into a session. I just let the session be what it is. Now, of course, if I'm prepping for a race, I don't want to go in. I'm going to taper my lifting so that I'm fresh going into a race. But when it comes to actual training, I don't worry about it too much. I'm sore. I'm sore. It is what it is. It's fine. So I might, if I'm like really, really crazy sore, I might adjust volume the next week so that I'm not going into my session super, super sore. But I don't worry about it. Whereas I found that people who have a running background tend to be very, very concerned. If they get sore in their legs, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sore for my run. Like, I don't know, should I not? I'll get texts from clients. My legs are sore, my hamstrings are a little sore, and I don't really know, is this a bad thing? Should I be running? Yes, you can totally run. I think the perceived fear of I'm not going to have as good of a performance is worse than the actual thing in and of itself. Again, I've had some of my best sessions being really sore on super trash legs. And if anything, it actually helps with my confidence as a runner, because I think, wow, if I can put down these times when I'm pretty sore, like imagine how much more I can do when I'm fresh. So don't be worried. You will be a little sore. It's okay. But those are some big differences to look out for. I also think that there is just a better know thy sport and know thyself. I think there's a better ability to auto-regulate um, in the thing that you're good at, right? Because you have experience with it. I think runners know better how to auto-regulate when it comes to running volume. They can kind of see when they need to pull back a couple miles, or they need to say, okay, I'm just going to keep this quality here and then I'm going to cut this. Or, I'm jumping in intensity this week, so I'm going to pull this whole other workout here. Or my 2 intense quality sessions were really, really hard, so I'm going to ditch my 3rd quality session this week. You guys, I feel like you guys are tend to have a better ability to be able to regulate in that way. Not everybody, but a lot of the time, or at least even if you go against what you said, you still know. You're like, I need to cut this here. Same for lifting, right? Lifters, it's very kind of on the fly. A lot of my colleagues, my friends, me, when it comes to lifting, it's very easy to get in a session and start moving. And just as I'm going, I just know if I'm like, nope, this exercise isn't working, I'm going to replace this exercise with this, which gives me the same stimulus here, but it just feels better. Or, this is just not feeling good. I think actually I need to cut some of the hinges from the hips. Like I need to cut some of the hip flexion exercises. I need to do a little bit more stuff where I'm involving knee flexion, or I'm going to cut the reps here. Or you know what, I did 2 working sets and I feel like I got everything out that I needed of it. I'm cutting the 3rd working set. It's a lot easier to auto-regulate, right? Because you have so much experience with it and you trust yourself more in the sport. Whereas, when you're going into the opposite sport, it's newer to you. You feel like, oh, well, maybe it's supposed to be hard. Maybe I'm supposed to be sore. Maybe it's supposed to be this way. I don't know enough to transition the workout the way that I need to, where I know I'm still getting what I need out of the session, but I'm keeping my body safe, right? So be cautious of that. Like all of my runners who are going into the training room, this is why I encourage people to get a coach, get a trainer, lifters, it's like get a running coach, because they have more experience when it comes to what to do when things hit the fan, when you feel uncomfortable, when you're uncertain, when in the moment, you just need you need to auto-regulate, and you don't know how to self-regulate in those things. So just be cautious of the weakness, I think, in the thing that you're unfamiliar with, which is runners. When you go into the strength training room, just uh, be able to have the humility to say, I don't know, or maybe, or ask a question, or if you need a spot, get a spot, hire a coach if you want, or get on a call with a coach and just ask them questions about a program. If you feels like you're like, I got a lot out of this 2nd working set and I'm really toasty and my quads are blown up and I just don't want to do a 3rd set of this goblet squat, cut it. Like I would say err on the side of caution. And same with lifters as they approach running. It's like, if you're on your 4th 1 mile repeat and you're just like not hitting time on your 3rd mile, it's like maybe cut the 4th mile and then get warm, just do your cool down and get into it the next time, and make a note of the fact that maybe you blew up a little bit too quick on your 2nd 1 mile repeat. These are things that's like you've got to be able to fail at it a little bit and mess it up, but also I think there are ways in which you can go into it with an awareness of, I don't know, and so I'm going to err a little bit on the side of caution, or I'm going to have somebody help me. And when you go into it with that mindset, it makes the transition and the new stuff much easier. And it also allows for you to learn and avoid the mistakes a lot quicker. So that leads to my last point, which is the less understanding we have, the more help that is required. And so seriously, ask for help. I think That's why I hire a coach. That's why I'm constantly in deliberation with my clients. I'm talking with my clients about running volume because they have been running for years and years and years. And whereas lifting is kind of my wheelhouse, running is theirs. And so being able to have the humility to say, I don't know, what do you think about this? This is what I'm experiencing. And then where I fail is like, actually listen to them, take their advice, do what they say. They know better than you, and you're going to get different opinions. So I'd say, like, find a couple that you really trust and just stick with that. And any other inputs, I would say just take with a grain of salt, just because there's so many voices that you could be hearing everywhere all the time, especially like online on social media. It's like, find one or two strength coaches, or one or two friends that have a really, really big background with strength training if you're a runner, and ask them questions, get their advice, see what they think about things. I can speak from experience. We want to help. Like, we want to make sure that you're set up well, because obviously it's like, we want to see you succeed and run forever and do really well at it. Same with lifters who are going to running. If you're joining a run club, or if you are in some kind of running group, or if you are in a Facebook group of runners, do not be afraid to ask questions. Do not be afraid to spend a little money and invest in yourself, because if this is something that you want to do and you want to do it seriously, then you want to avoid as many of the pitfalls as possible, because there are, running long distance is hard on the body. Lifting weights is hard on the body. These are things that are going to they're going to create soreness, they're going to create confusion, they're going to create some stress, they're going to create a certain level of exhaustion. And so it's like, if we can find a synergy as quickly as possible, then that's the best case scenario for lifters, runners, and hybrid athletes, if you like the mix of both. So those are my tips in terms of just programming considerations from whatever your background is, whatever your origin story is. These are things that I would think about if I were a runner starting to lift, if I were a lifter starting to run. I hope this was helpful. If it was helpful, share it with somebody. If you have any questions related to programming, feel free to please leave a comment, ask me, DM me, my Instagram. All my information is in the description below. If you like this video, obviously like it and subscribe for more information. And if you want to join a community and you want to ask questions, I have a Facebook group called the Alchemical Run Club. It's a public group. I think I'm going to make it private, but I'm going to accept everybody. It's just so that I can avoid spam accounts, which I've already gotten. But everyone is welcome. And in it, I will release the podcast episodes a day earlier. I'm going to plan some Q&As, any kind of seminars that I ever do, I'm going to record and they'll be uploaded to that group. Any free guides that I have, you guys will have access to. So, and then obviously just being able to talk, communicate with each other and hang out and have a good time. Like, I want it to be a fun group. So it's new, it's in its novice stages, but I'm really excited to see how it unfolds, because community is really important to me. And I know how much just like already my run group has impacted me in my life. And so I want to be able to simulate that a little bit online via Facebook. So thank you guys for listening. I will see you all next week for another episode of the Alchemical Life podcast. Bye, y'all.